Hey everybody, Mr. Macintosh here, and the wait is over. The macOS Big Sur 11.2 update is finally here. This is the new update command center. We've got a lot of things to go over. We're going to do a live demo of the update install on an Intel device and on a Apple Silicon device so you can see how it goes. We're going to go over all of the fixes that the 11.2 update does, and then in the second part of the video, we're going to go into a deep dive of some of the more technical aspects of the update. You'll want to stick around to see it all because we got a lot to go over. Let's jump in and get started. So for this update video, I'm going to switch it up here and we're going to do it a little bit different. And what I mean by that is, as you can see, I've got multiple machines all set up so we can do some testing live in this video so you can see what to expect on your Mac when you install this update. For example, this here is my main Mac that I use, and it's a Intel Mac. And this machine is a Apple Silicon M1 MacBook Pro running 11.01. So if you didn't update to 11.1, this is going to be that test. And on this Mac Mini M1 is 11.1. So we're going to see how that update goes too. And then I'm going to start some of these updates live so we can kind of watch them as I go over some of the fixes in the update. So let's jump in right away and talk about some of the fixes. I've got my update article here that goes over all of the latest updates. And even as we are talking, I've got multiple updates that just came in fresh. For example, Apple has released a full installer for this update. The build number is the same, or the build version is the same as RC3. RC3, what is that? The release candidate 3. That means that Apple has released 3 versions of 11.2 that they thought was going to be the final version that you're going to get. And that's changed because in the past, Apple would release a final beta and then they will release another different version for the production or the live version 11.2. They changed it up and it matches more what iOS does with their updates. For example, when the release candidate comes out and the production update comes out, it's going to be the same build number as the release candidate. So that gives us a little bit of time to test. And if you've already installed that release candidate, you don't need to install an update because it's the same version when it goes live. So that's really important to know if you're doing a lot of the testing. The next thing we were waiting to see is there was a CVE vulnerability out there for sudo on Linux devices. And this just came out on Tuesday of last week. The vulnerability is CVE 20213156, a heap-based buffer overflow in sudo. And what this is on Linux devices, and we're still trying to find out if this affects Mac or not yet. So far, we haven't seen anything that has shown that it has from Apple. An unprivileged user can gain root privileges on a vulnerable host using a default sudo configuration. So again, I'm going to keep an eye on this to see if Apple does release any information on this. And I did check that the sudo version that is vulnerable is 1.831. The 11.2 update does have versions still installed. So we can see that over here on this machine. To get the version of sudo, all you need to do is type in sudo dash capital V, and you'll get the exact sudo version that you need, 1.8.31, and that's on macOS Catalina and Big Sur up to 11.2. So Apple has not updated that version yet. So again, we don't know if Mac is not vulnerable or Apple has not addressed it yet. We just don't know. Even the latest security article that Apple put out does not mention anything on sudo, so I will keep an eye on that one. Also note that it was just released today, Xcode 12.5, the beta version. It was noted that macOS Big Sur is going to be the minimum version available for 12.5 when it's released. So that's something really important to know. So if you're on Catalina and you're using Xcode to develop, now would be a good time to think about what you need to do to update to Big Sur. The next thing is Soft RAID. If you use Soft RAID and you have a Apple Silicon Mac, don't update to 11.2 yet because there's a problem with the driver, and I'm going to include a link to where it's Soft RAID talks about the problem with their software in M1 Macs. The next piece is that Apple just released this afternoon Safari 14.0.3 for Catalina and Mojave. 14.03 is included in the 11.2 update, so you don't have to worry about that for Big Sur, but I wanted to let you know if you were looking for that, Apple just released it for those security updates that just came out for Mojave and Catalina. Now let's jump right into release notes. One of the biggest pieces is that 11.2 improves the Bluetooth reliability. Everybody's been complaining about the problems with Bluetooth and 11.1. So let's hope that this update does fix that for peripherals, wireless headsets, keyboards, mice, all those pieces that use Bluetooth. And from what I've seen so far using it over the past couple days, it has improved, and I haven't really seen any slowdowns, disconnects, or weird sluggishness works with the Bluetooth devices. So that's a really big important thing that was one of the main things that people have been complaining about. Next one on the list is external displays show a black screen when connected to a Mac Mini M1 2020 Apple Silicon device when using an HDMI to DVI converter, just like this one here. So you go from HDMI to DVI and you would get a black screen and nothing would show up on the screen. So now when you use this, you do get a full screen, which is great because again, if you got a new Mac Mini and you didn't want to update your monitor yet, you would have a problem. And this works now, which is really great. The next one is iCloud Drive could turn off after disabling iCloud Drive in desktops, documents, folders option. And I've got this sitting up here so you can see that. You go into iCloud and then you go into the options where you can see the desktop and documents folder. So if you turn that off, you could have a problem where it would turn off the entire iCloud Drive. Now that's fixed in 11.2. The next piece is the system preferences may not unlock when entering in your administrator password. And that's an important one. So let's pull that up here and I'll show you what that looks like. So we'll click on done and we'll go into here. And let's say we want to go into users and groups, for example, and we want to unlock this. If you typed in your password and it didn't work on an Intel Mac, Apple has an article out that says to reset your SMC controller and then the password will work. So you would type in your correct password, you'd hit unlock and it would just shake you off. And that does not affect the M1 Apple Silicon Macs. It's only on Intel Macs. So if you had that now and you don't want to update to 11.2, just reset your SMC and you're good to go. But if you update to 11.2, this is now fixed. And on the final one, the globe key may not display the emoji symbols pane when pressed. So what the heck is that, right? Well, on an Apple Silicon MacBook Air and a MacBook Pro, we now have this globe key right here next to the function key. So if you type in anywhere where there's a text pane like this, you can click the globe key and the emoji icons should come up. But sometimes on 11.01 and 11.1, that did not happen. So that is fixed. And that's it for the Apple related updates for the general user base. And before we get into that, which is going to be what's new for enterprise, is I'm going to kick these off here. We're going to continue to go over the things on the Apple Silicon MacBook Pro, but we're going to send our Intel and we're going to send our Mac Mini Apple Silicon off to their updates so we can watch these things live while we're doing our update talk. So let's go into our system preferences here. We'll wait for the update to get. Now I pre-downloaded these updates because the traffic was really heavy today during this afternoon and it took a long time to download the updates. By the time you're downloading the update, hopefully the speed will pick up a little bit. Now as you can see, here's the update. You can click on more information. Notice how it says restart now. So that means that we're already downloaded and we can click on this and we can see all the information and notice how it's 3.25 gigabytes. This is 11.1. So that means that there is less information that needs to download. And I'll prove that to you because this Apple Silicon MacBook Pro is on 11.01. So when we open up system preferences here and check for the updates here, we're going to have the combo update and it's going to be bigger than the 3.25 gigabytes. So we'll click on more info here and we'll see it's 3.66 gigabytes. So we'll kick this one off right now. We'll hit install now and it's going to ask us for our password. Now keep in mind, if you have an Apple Silicon Mac, this is going to be a new piece here where it has to authenticate the user to install the updates, and that's the volume owner of the device. So we'll type in our password here to get this kicked off. And there we go. And we'll go over to this Intel MacBook Pro and we're going to kick off the update too. So we're going to go into software update here. And now as you can see, it's got the restart now button and we're going to click that and you'll see it's checking for updates there and it shuts everything down. Notice we didn't have a password. And notice how it's different, and that's why I wanted to show you this. On the Intel, we've got this update will take several minutes to complete, and the screen will turn blank for up to a minute. But look, we've got the Apple Silicon Mac is already restarted. So that's why it's really interesting to show the differences between how the update installs. Now look at this. You can see that the MacBook Pro with the T2 chip, a 2019, is now updating the BridgeOS software. Now, let's get back to the update here. We'll close this out and we'll go over, while we're waiting on these things to go, the what's new for enterprise. Now, what this is usually for is anybody that manages a Mac in the enterprise for a business, for a school, or any of those items. So this is a really nice thing that Apple does to show that, hey, we're also doing these fixes for the people in the enterprise. Now, keep in mind, this used to be only in the Appleseed notes. Apple has taken those Appleseed notes and then changed them to what's new for enterprise in macOS Big Sur 11.2. So let's talk about some of these real quick here. On Mac computers with an Intel processor, you can now use the StartOS install command inside macOS installer app, which is located in a non-boot volume while booted to recovery. Now, what does that mean? StartOS install is the binary inside the installer app. So when you run the GUI, which means that when you go into applications and click on install macOS Big Sur, it looks like, just we'll cut back to here. It looks like the BridgeOS update for the T2 security update just finished because it has a black screen when it's updating that. And notice how it did not have that happen over here. Now and look how far behind we are. The Intel device is starting to pick it up, but you can see that there's a little bit of a delay there when it was installing its BridgeOS update for the T2 security chip. Now back to this. The StartOS install is the binary that runs the install, whether you are doing an upgrade from Mojave or Catalina, or if you're going to do an erase and install, you can use that binary to run on this Mac to upgrade it, or just erase the current operating system on there and reinstall it right from the installer. So what that means is that if I boot this Intel Mac here to recovery, I could run that StartOS installer inside recovery to erase the drive and reinstall it. A lot of third-party applications like MDS, which is used to deploy Macs with a USB installer, uses StartOS install to be able to do that in the recovery. Now that's working. So that's really great that that's fixed. Now notice how that only talks about the Intel processor. It's still not supported. StartOS install is still not supported in recovery for Apple Silicon devices. So that's interesting that they note that for Intel devices. The next thing is setting custom UMask. Now works as expected. The next one, MDM, now can push a kernel extension policy payload to the Mac with an M1 chip and update boot security update settings automatically. What that means is if you have an MDM like Jamf Pro that installs a kernel extension policy to the Mac, which basically any kind of an application that, like for example, Symantec or McAfee used to have a kernel extension to run their virus protection software, and you ran a profile that would allow that, the Apple Silicon Mac would reboot to recovery and say that you needed to change the security settings. So obviously they didn't want that to happen, especially when that's a normal function that is supported. Now that's fixed. What happens is if that profile gets installed, it installs properly and it does not boot you to recovery, and it sets the kernel extension security policy automatically from the MDM. And that's for the Apple Silicon device. The next issue resolves an issue where the Mac computers managed by an MDM are sometimes unable to receive software updates using system preferences, and that's really important. There's an article here that was written by Victor who basically goes over the entire thing where he runs another MDM. This is actually from Micro MDM, where he said that, listen, if you run an MDM on your Macs for the business or schools, there's a bug that prevents you from even seeing the next update. So here's the problem with this fix. It's fixed in 11.2, but if you need to see the update again, the only way to see that this is working is update your Macs to 11.2 first, and then we'll have to wait for 11.3 beta to come out to see if it's fixed and working properly. So that's something interesting to think about. The next piece, the network extension content filters can now monitor traffic from non-built-in binaries. Interesting because this is something that Patrick pointed out for things like Little Snitch. Now, Apple has put that support back in for non-built-in binaries that can now filter and monitor traffic, and that was huge. That is now put back into 11.2, so like I said, applications like Little Stitch can now monitor that traffic, and this is huge. We've been asking for this, and Apple is listening, and it shows right here, so that was a really interesting piece there. So let's get back here, and again, we can see what's going on here. We're getting close to being finished with the update here, and resolves an issue where unable to unlock system preferences after upgrading from macOS Big Sur from macOS Catalina. Now that we already talked about that, it was mentioned in the other notes here. We're getting really close to being finished here. We'll go up here and we'll go over some of the other pieces. One of the interesting things about this particular update is that this is almost a record amount of beta releases. I've documented all the beta releases for 11.2 from beta 1 all the way to RC3. So it's 5 releases. And again, this is record. Apple's never released an update that has gone to RC3. We've got a previous Gold Master 2, but we've never gone to a 3. And initially we thought it was due to that sudo vulnerability, but again, I've got nothing on here that points to it. So if we go over here and we look at that security documentation here, it does not mention anything on sudo. So this is the update article that talks about all the security fixes built in to 11.2, and nothing in here mentions sudo. Not to say that it won't be added after, because when I talked about this on the last video, where it would say that sometimes Apple comes back and adds pieces to this and puts edited date in there when they can release that information. So that's another very interesting point. Now that we've got that, and then also this update's a week late. So again, that's why we were thinking that that was going to happen. But again, we still don't have anything to go by on that. Let's talk about the full installer app. The full installer has also been released, and it's 12.22 gigabytes. And this is interesting because I've now started including a link to the direct install assistant.pkg from Apple servers. And what this does is this is basically the entire macOS installer inside a package. So when you download this to your downloads folder, then you run the installer, and then it puts the install macOS Big Sur installation app in your applications folder. And I've heard from many users that have said, hey, I'm having so many problems trying to download macOS, whether it's from the App Store or whatever. This is one of the easiest ways to do it. And I've included a link for you to be able to do that. And again, that's 12.2 gigabytes. Now the Big Sur Delta update, like we talked about, was 3.25 gigabytes, and the combination update is 3.6 gigabytes. And there's also an Apple Silicon firmware update here, and it brings the Apple Silicon devices to 6723.81.1. There's also a T2 bridge update, like we talked about, the install process where that happens right after you reboot. It updates that Bridge OS is updated on the T2 security chip on the Apple devices from 2018 to 2020 for Intel, and that brings it to 18.16.14.346. Apple has also released the macOS Big Sur IPSW restore file for 11.2, and I put that on here in the name of that. And if you're not familiar here, I've got a database here that keeps track of all the macOS Big Sur IPSW files here. And when you scroll down, here's the 3 that have been released from production since macOS Big Sur was released. And you can click on this link and it will download the entire 13.71 IPSW file for you to use Apple Configurator 2 to restore your Mac and reinstall macOS. And we talked about the security content of macOS Big Sur 11.2. It is inside this document here if you want to take a look at those pieces. Another thing I wanted to talk about here too is that a lot of users have reached out to me the amount of free space that is needed for the update. They'll start the update and then it'll say you do not have enough free space, or they'll try the upgrade and it says that you do not have enough free space. And the best way to do is to go into the About This Mac section and look at the storage section. But the problem is that a lot of the information is kept under the other pane. If you're familiar with iOS, it plunks in a lot of the others as miscellaneous files. And I wanted to show you an app that I use to try to weed out where the information. That app is called Grand Perspective. And look at this. This is basically a snapshot of your entire hard drive with every single file all listed out there by the size and the type of file that you can see on the root of the volume. So for example, when you click on this, this looks pretty big, right? Well, if you look at it, guess what this is? This is the update that was downloaded, and you can actually right click on it and show Reveal in Finder, and this is a part of the update. If you go to the assets here, you'll see the assets v2 is now the new update folder for macOS Big Sur. It's not library updates anymore. It's System Library Assets v2 Mac Software Updates. So if we go in here and then we go into this folder here, this is where all the update files are stored and all the DMGs for the update. And if you look in here, that's one of them, and we can find the other one here. That's it. And we can just go right to that folder by clicking in there and Reveal and Find it. See, that is almost a gigabyte in size. So that's a really great way to show you where all these files are stored. Like for example, okay, we're back with our Mac Mini. We'll log in here and we'll take a look around, and look, it says that we're automatically updated. And remember when we ran that sudo version, it was 1.8.31. We'll do that again, sudo -V, and it's still 1.8.31. This machine is fully updated on 11.2, and we talked about the Safari update too. So we'll open up Safari and we'll go to About This Safari, and we can see that we're on 14.0.3. So Safari has been fully updated to the latest version to fix those security fixes. So one other thing I wanted to talk about while we were waiting for the Intel device is that one thing that I noticed is that the TMUtil snapshots, and you heard me talk about that before, which is a nice feature of APFS, is that I can take a time machine snapshot or a local snapshot of the Mac and then restore to that at any time. So when we go on this device right here on this Mac Mini, we can do TMUtil list local snapshots, and then the / for the root of the drive, we see that we have a time machine snapshot and the actual time that it was taken for that to happen. So what we can do is we reboot this Mini to recovery, and we can take a closer look at that snapshot to be able to revert back to that snapshot. Now what's interesting is that if you look in disk utility here, and we're right back up on our Intel device. We'll log in here. If you ever wondered what this snapshot is, well, with macOS Big Sur, you're booting a snapshot. It's a sealed snapshot too. So hopefully in the future, we'll be able to revert back to previous snapshots. For example, if you install an application and it doesn't work on 11.2, you can revert back to a previous snapshot. And that's what that means. And if you're ever wondering what that COM Apple OS update means, that's the update snapshot that this system is booted to, and it's a sealed snapshot when you boot the Mac. So let's boot this back into recovery, and we'll take a look at that snapshot that we took here. And while we're waiting for that to go down, we'll take a look at this here and make sure everything's good to go. And we're back in. And look, we are on macOS Big Sur 11.2, so we're all up to date and we're good to go. We've got our Mac Mini here that we're gonna boot into recovery, so we can take a look at that snapshot here. And we can take a look to see if there was any snapshots taken on this Intel Mac here. And we've got 2 snapshots listed here. So what we want to do is we want to see if those actually are 11.1. If they are, that's exactly what we want to be able to see, because we want to be able to revert back if there's a problem with the updates. This was a feature that was introduced in 10.13 High Sierra, but was removed in Catalina due to problems. And I was always hoping that Apple would add it back. So we're going to reboot this machine also back to recovery here. But before we do that, let's go into the time machine and the M1 to see if we have a snapshot in here. Because the other problem was if you created a snapshot, the update would remove it. So even if it wasn't working automatically, and I did a tmutil create a snapshot that I wanted to be able to revert back to 11.1 after I install 11.2, it would remove that, so everything would be wiped out. So we'll click on Macintosh hard drive, we'll click continue here, and we do have a snapshot, but unfortunately it's 11.2. So that was taken after, and you can see it was at 5:15 of this afternoon when that was taken. So that's a big bummer. So you can still click on continue and then click continue, and it will revert to that snapshot. So the next thing we want to do is, again, it doesn't tell us in here, but we can basically, one was before, and I was hoping that one was after the update here. We'll do sudo nvram internet recovery mode equals recovery mode disk, with all capital letters for the first of each word, and hit enter. And then we'll do a sudo reboot. Okay, we'll wait for that to go into recovery. And this is a real nice option for Intel devices. You can boot to Internet Diagnostics for hardware. You can boot to the local Apple hardware diagnostics. You can do the recovery partition that we're doing, and we can boot to Internet Recovery, Shift Option Command R. Now, what's interesting is we have almost every single piece that we want to be able to do for Intel recovery. The only thing we don't have is the Internet Recovery option to do Command Option R, which uses the latest version of macOS. So I don't know why Apple didn't include that, unless we don't have that option. That's the only thing we don't have. And again, this is only for Intel Macs. So we'll click continue here. And then we'll go into the tmutil for the Intel side and see if we have any snapshots from 11.1. I'm guessing that we'll only have 11.2, but we'll double check here. Click next. And keep in mind, you're only going to get the prompt to enter your password into recovery if you are an admin on the device and you have 5 Vault 2 enabled. We'll click restore from time machine snapshot or backup. We'll click continue here. We have to unlock the drive again. We'll click unlock. And we'll click our user, enter in our password. We'll give it a second here to unlock. And it seems a little buggy too, because when I clicked on Macintosh hard drive and I clicked, it would not unlock. So I had to exit out of Time Machine, come back in, and now I can click continue once the drive's unlocked. And unfortunately, we only have 11.2 to go back on. So the snapshots are still not being taken for macOS Big Sur to be able to revert back to the previous version if something goes wrong or something's not working right. So tmutil, or the local snapshots, are supposed to be taken by the operating system, your active everyday use, so you can always go back if something goes wrong. As as you can see here, one was taken at 440 and one was taken at 640. So again, that's how it should work, but it would be nice if Apple would add the option to be able to go back down to the previous version if something doesn't go right in the operating system update. And that's macOS Big Sur 11.2. I hope you guys enjoyed this video in this new format. Give me some feedback. Do you like the new format? Is this giving you the information that you need? Let me know. I want to talk about this update. Did you install it on your Intel Mac or your Apple Silicon Mac? Did it go flawlessly? Did you have any problems? Did it take a long time to download? Did it install really quick, as you could see here? Anything else that's working well? Did your Bluetooth get fixed? I want to hear it from you guys. I want to hear the feedback that you guys have. If this video created value for you, it'd help me out if you click that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, click on the subscribe button. And if you're already a subscriber, I really truly do appreciate it, and we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks a lot.